because of you fools. We've been dancing with the devil way too long. I know it's fun, but get ready to pay your dues. Oh God, come back home. This crazy world is filled with liars and abusers. We need you now before we're too far gone. I hope one day they finally see the truth. God, we need you now.
Well, good evening, patriots, freedom fighters throughout Saskatchewan, across the country, and around the world. How we all doing tonight? So here we are. We're back on Facebook, my regular main platforms, profiles. I decided that I would continue also to stream to Canada First and to Mark Friesen, Saskatoon Grasswood. We're also streaming to Forum for Canadian Sovereignty. We're streaming to Mark Friesen. So do me a favor. I am still restricted on Facebook because, I say bad things all the time. But I want to try to bust through this, pushing me lower on people's feeds. So share this out. Hey, Dan, good to see you. Hey, Marilyn. St. Michael, good to see you. So yeah, do me a favor, share this out. Let's bust through that thing they do to me. I'm also on YouTube still, so that's good news. We're on Twitter. We're on DLive. I will upload this episode to Rumble and Odyssey later tonight. But of course, I'm limited on StreamYard as far as how many destinations I can stream to, and that's 8. So, hello, Marie Josie. I hope I said that right. Herbert, good to see you. Yes, it's good to be back. So I'm excited about tonight's show. As promised, we have Joseph Bourgault who's going to join us. Before we get into that discussion, I just had an interesting day today on Twitter. I went out today as I normally do. The first thing I do is go to Tim Hortons. I get a coffee. I sit and have my coffee, and I go through my notes for the day, my estimates that I got to do, and I get organized. Then I check my social media. And as I was checking my social media, I saw a story that said that Tim Hortons is now denying Camp Day to children who aren't jabbed. And so this disturbed me greatly. I've been obviously a big supporter of Camp Day. I think a lot of us have been over the years. And I'm not on board with them discriminating against kids that don't need the jab. They are very, very minimally impacted by this flu. So for them to discriminate against the kids is pretty disgusting. So I managed to get it trending to boycott Tim Hortons on Twitter. So that was kind of fun. But of course, when you do that, it sends all of the Twitter trolls and the commies with their hair on fire after you. So I've been fending them off for most of the evening here, but all worth it. I'll take every one of those slings and arrows if we can start changing the narrative a little bit. So hey, Keith, good to see you. Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm doing really well, actually. I feel really good, all things being equal. So yes, we'll move on to the topic at hand, and that is Conservative Party candidate for leadership, Joseph Bourgault, a good Saskatchewan boy. And we're going to introduce Joseph a little bit. I'm going to let him do that, a little bit of his background, and then we'll get into this whole essentially being canceled by the Conservative Party. Joseph and his campaign raised the required $300,000. In fact, it was $367,000, if I'm not mistaken. They got the necessary signatures, and we're going to ask what the response is from the party of Joseph here shortly. But so without further ado, let's bring Joseph aboard and let's have a discussion and see if we can understand what the heck is going on. Joseph, good to see you, my friend.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me on.
Oh,
Good
my
to see
absolute
you.
pleasure.
Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. Where are you these days? You've been on this whirlwind tour, so it's hard to keep track of where you are.
Well, I'm back at home in
Are
St.
you?
Brew at my
Okay.
offices here.
Yeah.
We got back early last week. I kind of lose track of time because, like you say, it has been a whirlwind.
Yes, it sure has. And of course, I followed your tour, met you down in Swift Current, and then again up in Lloydminster. And there was a lot of energy around your campaign. And it was really starting to grow, and it was really starting to gain some traction. And it was impressive to see that. So extremely disheartening then on the other end to have happen what happened. But before we get into that, Joseph, I want you to give our viewers just a little indication of who you are, where you come from, how you arrived at these values and principles that you wanted to defend as leader of the Conservatives.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And I also want to thank you for attending the events that you attended, Mark. Everybody on our team has a lot of respect for you. You have stood up for truth for Canadians' charter rights and freedoms since the beginning. So I want to acknowledge you for that. And we were praying for you when you were ill. I was praying for you. You've had an important voice for freedom over the years. So thank you.
I appreciate that. And as I've said to so many that I was in their prayers and they prayed for me, that they worked. And the power of prayer is something that I was definitely introduced to in a big way. So yeah, and it's interesting too, just in terms of me attending your events. People sometimes question me because I'm a member of the PPC and I was a candidate twice. Why am I going to Joseph Bourgault's events when he's running for the leadership of the Conservatives? And at the end of the day, for me, it's about truth. I'll support anybody who's willing and has the courage to talk truth and to speak truth to the people and to power. And so I saw that in you, and I had no choice but to support what you represent. And so it's really an easy answer.
Well, it's a reflection of your character. As you know, it's not easy to speak the truth. As I watched your intro, Mark, it reminded me you must have been a mountain man in a past life. Like Grizzly's the appropriate. I like the Grizzly. You're a big man, a big guy, and you look like those mountain guys. Tough guy. So
well, I think as I've said on my show numerous times, that if I wasn't involved in this and fighting for freedom and for our values, I'd probably be living in the bush, because it's where I feel most comfortable, is being in nature. So it is what it is. But so tell us more about yourself, Joseph.
I grew up in small town St. Bruce, Saskatchewan. It was when I was growing up in the 60s. It was a town of about 350 people, and it was slowly diminishing at that time. And my parents, Frank and Therese Bourgault, they both had a deep love of community. And I can say that about the people that have a lot of relatives, had a lot of relatives here. And it's very community oriented people with a lot of love for community. So Dad, being a brilliant mechanic, an inventor, he had the idea that he wanted to create a manufacturing plant to create jobs for the young people in the community so they wouldn't leave St. Brew and Saskatchewan for the oil patch in Alberta. And so I grew up with that. Both my parents, never do my siblings and I ever remember them lying or twisting the truth in any way, shape, or form. Dad and Mom both always stood up for what was right. There was never any talk of any type of racism in our family. I felt like I grew up with the best parents that a child could have as role models, and they weren't preachers either. I talk more than both my mom and my dad do.
Right.
And maybe one of the reasons why I do is because my father, he was brilliant, and yet he could have taught us so much more if he would have spoke more, I felt. And so that motivated me to be a bit more of an educator, to want to share with people. So that was the environment I grew up with really honest, principled parents and grandparents and relatives who stood up for what was right. And so my siblings and I grew up with that. When Dad started the industries, basically in 1969, I was 13. I started working with him. He was the service manager of Koki and Bourgault Implements, Mass Ferguson dealership. And I was a grease monkey, but that's also the year he invented the Bourgault multi-purpose cultivator. And that took off. In 1973, he incorporated FP Bourgault Industries, and that continued to grow. And now we have Bourgault Industries, FP Bourgault Tillage Tools, Dry Air, Asia Industries, Freeform Plastics, over 800 manufacturing jobs in a community of 700 people. So people drive from a 75-mile radius to come and work in St. Bru. So that's partly what got me going. It helped me to develop my leadership skills. I've been a manager since I was 18 years of age, in executive leadership skills since I was 29 years of age. So I've learned about leadership, and I've always been passionate studying leadership, the best leaders in the world and political leaders as well. Very interested in political leaders. You could say I grew up in a very political family, debating politics, Saskatchewan, Canadian, US, world politics, leaders, so I grew up immersed in that environment all my life.
And it's interesting that you say that, Joseph. It's when we talk about leadership, one of our great deficits these days throughout our country, and I think across every province, is this deficit in leadership, this real lack of leadership, where our politicians tend to follow the prevailing narratives that are developed mostly by the media, rather than doing what's right, rather than making decisions that might not be popular, but are the right decisions. And maybe after a year or two, those decisions would play out, and you could show that these decisions were the right thing to do. But it doesn't seem that any of our politicians have that leadership or that patience to do the right thing. And this is another reason why I supported you in your campaign, because we are desperate for leadership.
Yeah, thank you. That's a really astute observation, Mark. You realize that as well. Let me give you an example of that in our company. I could see that when China began to rise years ago, I spoke to, fortunately, I was the principal owner and president of the manufacturing company I owned. And I always made the case that we have to support local Canadian, US manufacturers as much as possible, even if they were more expensive, our suppliers were more expensive, because I knew I would say this to people, and this is a decade, 20 years ago, talking about this, that China is a communist country, and we have to be very careful. We have to be very strategic in supporting China. And as their behavior, it should be according to their behavior that we support them or not. And so I always argued that the jobs had to be preserved as much as possible in our community and in our country. I did not want to be supporting China with a communist dictatorship that was headed in the wrong direction. That wasn't popular at the time for me to do that.
Right.
So we have to provide value to our farm customers, but there are really important things that have to be considered when you're buying from suppliers as well. And I would say that to anybody. Read the label of who you're buying from.
Absolutely. And that's incredibly important, because it leads into the economic situation that we're in, where, families are struggling to just get by. Families are struggling just to pay the bills, just to pay rent. And so they're forced to shop at places like Walmart that fills their shelves with goods made in China. So it's attractive for them because of the situation that so many families find themselves in. They have no choice but to shop for what's the cheapest. And we all know that when you shop cheap, it doesn't last. You end up throwing it away and you have to go buy it again. And so this cycle that we've been put in through this whole economic model that we're under it's all connected, and people have to understand this.
Yeah, and this is where, as you heard me in my campaign, like, first of all, you have to have a vision. And the vision that I have, and I believe you have, Mark, and the majority of Canadians would share the vision, but you have to articulate it. And the vision is that we want to create a healthy, happy, peaceful, prosperous country governed by the rule of law, a military strong country that can defend its borders. Yes. And so that's the vision. Now, to create the vision, it takes a strong set of core values and principles that are grounded in truth. So as you've heard me articulate, my value system, what I value most of all, above all else, is my relationship with God, our creator. And I learned to meditate in 91, and prayers when you talk to God, meditations when you listen. I was very ill in 91 when I learned to meditate, and I began to receive insight that led me out of the illness that I was in. I was asking God for help and guidance, and I received insight that led me out of the dark hole of severe chronic fatigue, severe chronic depression, severe chronic headaches, severe chronic depression with the headaches. And so I value above all things my relationship with God. And from God, as you rightly pointed out, as you were speaking very early on about the Charter rights and freedoms, in the Charter is, whereas Canada was founded upon principles that recognize the supremacy of God and the rule of law. And all those rights that are in the Charter, they were given to us by our Creator, not by politicians, not by governments. So they have no right to take our rights away from us.
Absolutely not. 100%.
And you were educating Canadians about that. Nobody was out there more in Canada speaking out about the Charter rights and freedoms than you were. You were educating people. And so I think as truth leaders, that's what we have to do, is we have to have Canadians understand the principles on which this country was founded upon. That's why soldiers went and gave their lives and died, so that we would be free.
100%. And this is a lot of the reason why I do what I do, Joe, is because so many before me gave the ultimate sacrifice so that I could have the life that I had as a kid and the freedom that I had, that we all had and we all enjoyed, based on these inalienable rights that aren't given to us by a government, that aren't given to us by, somebody in power. They're inalienable. It's God that gave us these rights. And we have to understand that this Western civilized world is based on Christian values. It's based on those tenets. And this is what we've strayed away from. So people have to understand that it's those values, freedom, liberty, justice, equality, prosperity, and truth. It's those values in particular that are under attack. And so, my hope and what I saw in you as well is that we can unify Canadians under values that we all agree, these core values that it would be tough to find some that don't agree with them. There are maybe some communists that don't agree with these values, but majority of Canadians do. And we need to unite under those values and defend them vigorously.
Yeah, you're right, Mark. And as leaders, I'd love to be the prime minister of the country, but I would not lie or deceive to get there. Exactly. I want to get there by speaking truth, as I understand it. And that doesn't mean that I know the truth about everything, but, I've been around for a few years. I wrote a book titled The Way of Truth, 52 chapters on how to solve problems in this country. It's not published. It's a manuscript, but I do intend to publish it. And it's all Yeah, everything is based on the core values and principles. There should be no legislation in this country that doesn't pass through the filters of God, love, truth, freedom, justice, and equality before with the rule of law,
Right.
equality for all Canadians.
Exactly.
If it doesn't pass the test of those principles, it should be legislated out of existence.
100%. And so here we are, Joseph. We, people that maybe haven't heard you speak before on my channel are now getting introduced to Joseph Bourgault, and I'm sure all of them love what they're hearing from you. So you went through a campaign, you raised the required amount of money that the Conservatives put on each candidate, that they have to raise $300,000, and that you had the 500 signatures that were required. So, and it was, as I said, as the campaign moved along, it was growing, and there was, you could feel it, and I could sense it, that you were turning a corner a little bit here, and that was exciting. And of course, then all of a sudden, you had the rug pulled out from under you. Tell us, what happened?
Well, basically, as you had mentioned earlier, we had submitted, I had passed all the tests in the race, and in the end, we submitted on Thursday, April 28th, we submitted the balance that was needed. We had submitted $367,453, which was $67,000 more than we needed to pay the entry fee, if you will, and the compliance fee of $100,000. We had paid them, and it took us a number of days to hear from them. And when we heard from them, and we were concerned because it wasn't adding up, by Sunday night when they called to let us know that we were ineligible because we hadn't raised the required funds, it was a shock to hear that. I just was, okay, yeah, okay. Because, what to say? We didn't have any facts they didn't give us any facts. They just told us that.
Right.
And so because we didn't have any factual evidence, they followed up with a generic letter telling us that we didn't meet the requirement because we hadn't raised the $300,000. So we appealed that to another committee, and we got a call back from the Leadership Election Oversight Committee, the chair and the executive director. And they explained to us in more detail what they had found. And we made our case respectfully with them. We respectfully listened to what they had to say. And there were 3 of us in that meeting on Wednesday night. And it still doesn't make any sense. There's common sense. It doesn't add up that on a technicality that they found in one of the documents that was submitted, we based that document was based on what was in the Elections Canada finance campaign rules. We followed the rules. We had to write that document up ourselves because there was no document from the Conservative Party or from Elections Canada that said it had to be done this way. So we wrote it up in a way that made sense. The people that it was a simple loan document. The people that loaned us the money read the document, signed it, and lent us the money. If anybody should have been concerned about the way it was written, it should have been the people that lent us the money, but they weren't. And so for them to reject us on one line in that document that we still think makes sense based on the rules, it's difficult to find the words to describe. It just doesn't make any sense. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, and as much as I'm extremely disappointed to see this and how they've treated you, I honestly can't say that I'm terribly surprised. I listened to you on a number of occasions, and the amount of truth that came out of your mouth on every stage would have an establishment party, regardless of who it is, nervous. And so I think, obviously I can only offer my opinion from my perspective, but I think that had a lot to do with what decision they made in terms of you moving on or not. And, that I have to be honest, that's what I think. And my experience with the Conservative Party through a number of other people has been this sense of corruption, this sense of controlling narrative and controlling, ideas. And quite frankly, I don't think they want somebody like yourself who's going to tell the truth. I just have to be honest.
Yeah, no, and I can understand that. We all observed that, like when Derek Sloan was let go kicked out of the party, that didn't make any sense to all of us. All he was doing is speaking what he felt was true in that situation. I believe Dr. Tam, if that was the circumstance. So, I mean, I think what's going to happen if the Conservative Party doesn't let us back in on a technicality that it could be, if everybody really knew that what they kicked us out on,
right?
It would be you have to shake your head. And if they don't have an honest election campaign, you can become the leader, whoever it might be, become the leader. But if you're involved in any way in having me removed from the campaign,
right,
and you don't have honest debates about the ideas and the principles and the vision you have for the country, you can be elected the leader, but you're going to go down the same way that went down with Aaron O'Toole.
Absolutely, 100%, 100%. So there's an appeal process within. Is there any remedy to this, through the law, through lawyer? Can you sue the party? Is that something that you would want to do? What's the next steps?
That
and you don't have to say what you don't feel comfortable saying, because I know it's, before things happen, you kind of have to be careful. So it's all up to you.
Yeah, I just want to think about that question. Like, what honesty and integrity is what my campaign is about.
Right.
And one of the last things that I would want to see happen is the people who believed in me and in our campaign, the team who believe in us and what we stood for. The last thing I would want to do is ever cheat them out of one red cent. So we will do everything, and I'll put it this way: we're going to do everything within reason and within our power to do as quickly as possible an investigation to determine whether or not they had a right to remove me from the campaign based on that single line in the document that they pull out of it. And it's not a terrible line. It just said that all it says is if within 3 years we cannot repay that donation, that because it has to be repaid from fundraising.
Sure.
If it could not be repaid, that it could turn into a donation. And so, we would gladly remove that. We offered that. We would go back to the people who loaned us the money and ask them that question. Sure. We could do that within 24 or 48 hours.
Right.
And that's what we're being kicked out on that. So we're gonna dig as deep as we can to see whether Elections Canada has a problem with that, who has a problem with that, and why. And so assuming, we're not giving up on the possibility with an appeal that we could stay in the race. We've got till August to continue our run at convincing Canadians that we have the vision, the core values, the honesty, integrity. But the last thing I'm going to do is stand by and jeopardize the money that was invested in our campaign. So I'm going to stand up for all those people. I think that they should, if they won't let us in, no matter what, I feel that everyone that donated to our campaign should get their money back.
Absolutely. 100%. Right. And so do you think if that's, the outcome that they're just refused to let you back in, do you think there's going to be a problem getting that money back? Or you think that's going to end up being a fight? Because I have seen historically that being the case, that there has been some trouble getting some of that money back.
Yeah, that is a hill that I would, as a principal guy, honesty and integrity is critical. And it would be, if they won't let us in, it would be wrong for them to keep the funds that people donated because they believed in me.
Exactly.
They believed that I'm telling the truth. And so I have to stand up for those Canadians that supported our campaign.
Yeah, 100%. So let's hope that, there's a resolution in your favor in the near future so you can carry on your campaign. I mean, obviously you already missed the debate that of the 6. But let's hope, cooler heads prevail and common sense prevails and they let you back in. But if not, Joseph, what do you see Joseph Bourgault doing? Because I don't think your political career is over by any stretch. I think it's just starting. And so where do you see Joseph Bourgault going if this doesn't work out the way we want it to work out?
Well, what would I do if I knew I couldn't fail? If that door closes, what I would do is gather up all the honest, truth-seeking Canadians, people like yourself, Mark, all the honest, truth-seeking, principled Canadians. We have an organization that we founded in 2020, Canadians for Truth, Freedom, and Justice. And they're founded on the same principles that I'm running on. God loves truth, freedom, and justice, and equality before the rule of law. And I would want to gather up it would be like a think tank, and that we would continue to work together to discern the truth, to work to educate Canadians, to get millions and millions of Canadians. I believe that millions of Canadians are right with us already. 92% of people supported the Freedom Convoy. So I think that if we continue what we're doing, I would gather up all honest, truth-seeking Canadians working together to put forward solutions, possibly to start another political party. I wouldn't rule that out. To stand up for the principles that we share. And I believe that we have the policies. I know that the policies that I'm advocating would transform the country and unify the country.
I don't disagree. Again, I think these are core values that most Canadians share. And I think, when you mentioned 92% of Canadians supported the convoy, those are the people we're talking about. Those are the Canadians that, these set of core values that we have in common. And we have to throw out all of the noise and unite around these particular core values that are under attack. And they are under attack for a reason, because in order for the globalists, in order for World Economic Forum, UN agenda to be successful, they need to get rid of all of those values that we stand on. And so, here we are. And this is the fight that I've told people for years, this is where we're headed. And here we are. And so, I can't tell you enough how much I love to see somebody running for office, especially the leader of the Conservative Party, that had the courage to stand up on a stage and tell people the truth. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. The leader of the PPC, Maxime Bernier, I've said the same thing to him, because he's taken a lot of slings and arrows and a lot of heat for the truth that he speaks. And so anybody that's willing to do that, has my support. And so I greatly appreciate what you've done to this point, and I look forward to seeing what you're going to do in the future. And I'm with you. If I mentioned in a live stream the other day that Saskatchewan has punched above its weight for a long time, and we're about to do it again, because we have, we're a special place in Saskatchewan where, we're still 50-50 rural to urban, and these values that we cherish and that the self-reliant, self-determination, independent spirit that, is still very strong in this province, and a lot of people still want to defend that. And so we have this natural sort of opportunity in Saskatchewan to lead the country and to lead the world. And here you are from Saskatchewan, and myself and a lot of good folks here. You know what? This is the opportunity. We have to take it.
Yeah, I agree with you on that point, Mark. In an earlier interview I did, if I may, I was asked, what about Western separation? Are you would you be open to separating? And I thought of it only after. And so what I thought, I wished I would have said to him is, my dad always said, Frank Bourgault always said, if you want to solve a problem, you have to get at the truth of the matter. And you can't solve a problem by creating more problems. Right. Western Canada separating from Canada does not get at the root cause of the problem. The root cause of the problem is that we must educate Canadians. The millions, the majority of Canadians have to understand that when you elect a leader, you make darn sure, if it's a man or woman, doesn't matter what the color of skin is. What matters is the character of those people that you are electing, that they're honest truth seekers, that they will pursue the truth, that they can put two and two together to solve problems. And if that's our challenge right now, we have to educate the majority 100%. Of Canadians to understand that there isn't a problem in this world, in this country, we can't solve if we work together in a spirit of cooperation in pursuit of truth, to gather the facts, to discern the truth of the matter, and we act on what we find to be true. The Chinese have a saying, a clever person takes big problems and turns them into little ones, and then takes little problems and turns them into nothing at all. And that's what us truth seekers do.
100%, Joseph. And, when we talk about separation, I've said I've gone through stages in my political life. When I was in my late teens, early 20s, I was a bit of a separatist. I was kind of tired of how Ottawa was treating us. As I moved along and evolved, of course, the Reform Party started around that same time. I joined the Reform Party. I was very active, and I liked, the values that Preston was bringing to the table and defending. And of course, then they broke my heart when they merged with the Red Tories. And so I was politically homeless for a very long time. But, at the end of the day, separatism is not going to solve the problems. It doesn't go after, as you say, the root problem. It's a silver bullet maybe in the minds of some, but it doesn't solve it. In fact, I think, and I've said this to a lot of times on my show, is it might actually exacerbate the problems when you become a small entity between maybe Alberta and Saskatchewan, and all of a sudden you're trying to compete in the world. And Ukraine is a really good example how they've been sort of taken over by the World Economic Forum, the corruption. I mean, that can happen. And I mean, it's happening in Canada even. So, to make yourself a small, vulnerable entity politically is exactly what the globalists want, and they do around the world anyway.
Yes.
Setting up countries and breaking them up. So
and the real problem
right into their hand.
Yeah, and the real problem are people who lie. Justin Trudeau there's no other way to describe it. He's a liar. He doesn't tell the truth. And so what do you imagine young people that are out there? If you have a friend and how many times does he have to lie to you before it breaks the relationship?
Right.
And that's what we have as a prime minister. And yet we elected him. All we have to do is look in the mirror and make sure and ask ourselves, do we want a prime minister that's a liar?
And Joseph, you're taking words right out of my mouth and my heart, because I've said a lot of times, and I've given, the people a lot of shit, because myself included, we've been fat and lazy and content for many decades. We haven't held our political leaders and our representatives responsible or accountable for what they've done, what they've agreed to, what they've signed us up for. We ignored it all, and we've allowed it to get to where it is. And now when we're re-engaging, it's not easy. and it's not going to be easy. It's very hard, but that's the job of people like yourself and myself and others, is to inspire, motivate, and encourage people to get back to being involved and taking responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have to, it's like parents. We have to lead by example. And I'm not saying people have to be perfect, but I mean, the gross, the way Trudeau, when he declared the War Measures Act on the truckers, I was out there, you were out there, I was out there the whole time. And what he described when he declared the Emergency Act, or declared war, basically, on a legal, peaceful protest, which a judge has ruled to have been a legal, peaceful protest.
Right.
What he described was, he's like in Alice in Wonderland. I don't know how he lives up there. It's like there aren't two neurons that touch one another,
It's amazing. So absolutely, it's amazing. But again, it's his name, and he's a puppet, right? So he doesn't need to think. He's just here, go in front of a camera and do this. So, but I also want to thank you, Joe. I, of course, wasn't able to go to Ottawa on the convoy this time around because I was recovering. It's probably one of the biggest regrets I have in my life, missing that convoy to Ottawa. Just because I had laid so many tracks leading up to it, it was really hard to sit here and watch. Although it made me feel so good that there were so many people and there was so much love, and there's people like yourself representing and got involved, guys like Chris Barber and others. I mean, how could I not be happy to see what was happening? It was phenomenal. So thank you for that.
Well, you had done your part. You were an early warrior. From day one, you were standing up for the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, for standing up for truth and our God-given rights. So, yeah, when you're in a hospital bed fighting for your life, you cannot, you could not be out there. So nobody will ever fault you for that, Mark.
Well, I know, but it was just, the timing was just this much off me being able to do it. But whatever, like I said, so many people represented so well, and what an amazing accomplishment, because it truly was. And I think what it did is it reestablished some positivity that, there is a lot of Canadians that feel the same way we do, and that cherish these values. So I think that was probably the biggest role that convoy played, is re-energizing people and re-inspiring them.
Yeah, and I think we know, as I traveled Saskatchewan, Alberta during my campaign in March and April here, and we'll be traveling the rest of the country over the coming days, weeks. And so if Canadians, however our battle goes, if you want to support us, CanadiansForTruth.net. It's expensive to do what we're doing, and we're trying to amp it up all across the country. So if you support what we're doing, Canadians for Truth is a nonprofit organization. It's not a charitable organization. It's a nonprofit. So people could go to CanadiansForTruth.net, and you can read our vision, our core values and principles. And we're going to continue to expand on the policies that we want to see in our country to convince Canadians to help Canadians realize that there are solutions to the problems that we're facing in our country, And that's what we're going to keep doing. We call it Team Canada. We're going to continue to grow and gather like-minded people. You're definitely invited to be a part of that, Mark, to travel the country. We talked with you about going to BC possibly, to gather up all Canadians, because I think we can, if we can convince the majority of Canadians what are the right things to do, the politicians are going to have to follow, or they're going to be removed.
100%. I have two more questions for you, Joseph. So in the last little while, we'll say, I've really sort of focused a little bit down on provincial politics, because I think, again, Saskatchewan has this special opportunity, and I want to inspire the people of the province to get involved and to get active in their communities and rally each other. So is provincial politics something that you would see yourself involved in, or are you looking more big picture federal?
The short answer is I have always felt guided more where I'll say God is guiding me is federal. Ever since I was in my 20s, I felt this calling federally to, I didn't understand that at the time completely. I felt that Pierre Trudeau was destructive to our country. And that's when my interest in the position of prime minister began. I actually had thoughts of wanting to be the prime minister in my mid-20s. I chased those thoughts away because I would keep giving them to God. I did that all my life because I didn't really understand where it was coming from. And
right.
I didn't want to do anything egotistically, just for power or fame,
right.
or that doesn't interest me. But right. I felt guided to run for the leadership of the Conservative Party and to someday become prime minister, because I feel I have what's required to get our country back on the right track. So I feel guided strongly to national leadership. Provincially, I know there are people at it, and I think it wouldn't hurt for us to have another political party to compete with the Sask Party.
Absolutely.
The Sask Party made a lot of mistakes over the last 2 years.
They sure have.
And so I think,
and they're still making them.
Yeah, what's beauty about when there's free and fair enterprise is competition, giving people choices. So I'm supportive of the group of people that are right now working to looking to form another political party. I hope that they would design it around the principles that we articulate at Canadians for Truth, Freedom, and Justice, because I believe if you're going to build a house, you want to put it on a solid foundation. And I would, to the people that are part of considering forming another political party, and to the Sask Party, if you want reform, you have to get on to the proper principles of upholding the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, recognizing God as our creator and the creator of the natural scientific laws that govern our existence. Love of family, love of community, love of truth, love of freedom, truth, the relentless pursuit of truth. I see what happened during the COVID-19 situation. None of these political leaders could put 2 and 2 together. No. No. And so truth is essential. That's what science is all about. The pursuit of truth in science, journalism, the pursuit of truth in journalism, gather the facts with an open mind.
Exactly.
So freedom and personal responsibility, justice, and fairness. A political party has to be built on those principles. And every piece of legislation has to run through those filters. And if it doesn't meet those tests, it should not exist.
So my last question, then, I'm going to lead you into it. Everything that we've discussed, and I think we're on the same page when it comes to these values. And the phrase that you just talked about is exactly what the People's Party rallies around, those core values: freedom, fairness, respect, and responsibility. And so my question to you, Joseph, knowing, and I'm not sure how much of our platform if you've looked into it, but is the PPC something that you would explore? And then the second part to that question is, I know that you see yourself as the prime minister and want to be prime minister. Maybe that's in a year or 2 or 3, or maybe there's a leadership race of some kind that you would be involved with, being on the PPC party. So I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, good question, Mark. I ask you this question: is God openly acknowledged at the center of the People's Party of Canada?
Well, I'm not sure that it's centered there. I know that we, as a party, it sort of stays away from promoting it as the centerpiece, but we do accept, obviously, people of faith, Laura Lynn Tyler Thompson, and many others, and we recognize the importance of that. Is it a centerpiece? That's up for debate.
if any party that I would be the leader of, I speak openly, as you know, recognizing God as our creator, because I believe that we are all God's sons and daughters, and that's how we are equal, because we are created equal. The American Declaration of Independence, we hold these truths to be self, that all men were created equal and endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights, the right to life, liberty, and I think they should have said the pursuit of truth, which leads to happiness. To me, unless God is in the picture, we'll never get our country back together. He has to be at the center of it. And I'm not speaking religion. I'm speaking of God as our creator.
Right. And I completely agree with you, and I'm completely on board with you. I just, so here we have this discussion provincially too, with these new provincial parties and entities coming up. That's a discussion on the inside. How focused do we want to be with religion, and do we want to, pigeonhole ourselves into that, being labeled or considered a SOCON, rather than, more about the bigger values that we all cherish. So I think there's a fine line that you have to sort of walk there. I at the same time, I agree with everything you just said, that God has to be seen as supreme, and what that represents, and what it means.
See, the God that I know, like when I speak of God, I'm speaking of God as our creator, the creator of everything and all of us. Sure. I'm not speaking in religious terms, although I am a born-again Christian and proudly born again. I respect Jesus as a historical figure and also as a spiritual teacher. I've learned so much from studying Jesus's life, and I'm born again every day. I ask Jesus to be in my heart and mind, to guide me, to discern the truth about everything. The values that he taught, like love, forgiveness. Where would the world be without the concept of forgiveness, eh?
Absolutely, 100%. And Lynette just made a great comment, and this is why I'm at where I'm at in my journey, because I understand that we're in a spiritual war. We are in a spiritual war right now, and people need to understand that and recognize it.
Yeah, and what's going on? You're absolutely correct, and God is the creator of it all, and the idea that Satan will defeat God, I'm not real big believer in Satan, but it's possible that he exists. I think my biggest enemy in my life was my ego, and still is, if to the degree that I have ego, and the acronym for ego is edging God out. So the degree that I have ego, I'm still part of the problem. And so I'm trying to get to the day where I could walk on.
You're human, right? You're human.
I'm trying to get to the day where I could walk on water like Jesus,
All right. Yeah. Aren't we all? Yes. Well, fantastic. So you didn't slam the door on the PPC, so that's good. I'll tell you what, and I'll be honest with you. Here I am. I was politically homeless for a lot of years, and when Maxine created the PPC, I was still skeptical. I was one of those that said split the vote, nonsense. But then I got into a debate with some friends of mine, and they forced me to consider what he was bringing to the table and these core values and what I was about. And of course, I was focused and still am on this globalist agenda. So for me, I had to look at what was created and how it matches up with what I'm battling. And it matched up perfectly. Not that Max knew exactly what was really happening. It took me working with him for a year to get him to really understand and grasp what we're up against. But it's now, it's there. For me, it's the party that represents, Canada first, and our interest and the people of Canada's interest are first. And so that's where I'm at. And the second part to that, Joseph, is I would be concerned, I guess is a good word, to have another party start to split more of the vote. Right. But I get the competition argument, but I'd like to see us, unite. I really would.
Well, for me, the way what unites us is God, because He's our creator. And so if people are, I was chastised in Canadians for Truth for speaking of God. And I'll leave Canadians. I'm elected president of Canadians for Truth, co-founder of it. I would leave before I would not speak of God. And I don't speak of God to put words in God's mouth. I think, to me, the way I see God, it's important that every Canadian, if they're willing, if of their own free will, because God gave us free will, we don't have to acknowledge Him or have a relationship with Him if we don't want. But I think everyone has the capacity to have a conversation with God and to discern the truth as God guides them for themselves. And that's all I'm advocating. I'm not speaking for God.
Yeah. Right.
It's So, but I think to me that's a deal breaker for me. If the PPC is interested in having me in their party, they should look at the core values and principles that are in Canadians for Truth, Freedom, and Justice. And if they share those values and principles and are willing to make that the foundation of the PPC, then I would consider it. But the other thing I think that's important is the name, because the name creates a focal point. It's no accident that we name Canadians for Truth, Freedom, and Justice. It's no accident that the motto of my campaign was Truth, Freedom, and Justice.
Right.
So if the PPC would consider changing the name to Canadians for Truth, that would be interesting as well. So there would be some things that, you can run that past Maxine.
Yeah. And it's, we have some time. And so these discussions are going to happen, I think. And, just similar to what's happening in Saskatchewan, we have, 3 different entities politically. One's the Buffalo Party and 2 others. And I see it as good. When I talk about freedom fighters and patriots, we're not collectivists. We don't group think. We don't think like the mob. We're individuals, and we promote.
That's a good way to put it, Mark.
Yeah, and we promote individual freedom, right? And so we all have our ideas. That's why there's so many groups. That's why there's so many different quote unquote leaders, and people are trying to force all of these people under one tent, and that's impossible. We're all on the same path, moving in the same direction, and that's fantastic. Out of necessity, those paths will eventually merge.
I think you're absolutely correct. One thing you said, I think you made a mistake. You said we don't think like the mob. I think you meant to say we don't think like the Liberals.
Right, 100%. Absolutely. And so that's the way we sort of are over here, and that's okay. We have to accept that. Unfortunately, politics ruins everything, as my friend Viva Frey likes to say. Because eventually under politics, you have to unite under one tent if you're going to be successful, especially these days. So lots of discussion will have to be had, but you know what? It is what it is. I support everything you're doing. I'm going to actually invite you. We're planning a tour at the end of June on our way to Ottawa for Canada Day through Northern Ontario. If you'd like to join us, you're more than welcome.
Well, appreciate that invite. You might have to nudge me. We're building like Team Canada. We're gonna Canadians for Truth. We're gonna we're planning events. So, nudge me on it, and if it works out, I would absolutely consider that, Mark.
Absolutely, sounds good. We will definitely talk. Thanks again for joining us, Joseph. I'm going to let you go now. We've been at it for an hour. And I know I was reading the comments, and people are very impressed with Joseph Bourgault, as they should be. So thanks again for joining us, and take care. Have a good night, and we'll speak soon.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Really appreciate it. God bless.
Back at you. Bye, Joseph.
Bye.
All right. So good round with Joseph Bourgault. I only met the guy a few weeks ago in Swift Current. I was immediately impressed. We managed to have half-hour discussion in the lobby of the hotel where he was speaking at, just me and him. And that was great. And I got a real good sense of who Joseph is and what makes him tick. I've listened to him speak on the stage a few times, and I'm impressed. The guy is genuine. He has integrity. And again, a lot of people are asking me, get him to come on the PPC, and of course, that's what I would prefer, because when you talk about these values that we share, they're all the same. They're all the same, and so we'll see how that process goes. It is what it is. I don't see any problem with other groups doing what they do, spreading the message, and truthfully, it's all positive. It's all great. At some point, again, this unification will have to happen, and egos will have to be swallowed, and agendas will have to be put aside, and so we can achieve the ultimate goal, and that is to turn this thing around. And we got a lot of work ahead of us. So, anyways, I was going to have, it's Friday night, I was going to have Salim on after Joseph, but Salim is transporting his daughter around for her prom night. So he has to be excused tonight. And of course, I was more than happy to let him do his thing. So maybe tomorrow night we'll see. I still have to see what's going on around here, if I can squeeze it in tomorrow night. But yeah, great discussion with Joseph. Great guy. The other thing is, I got to talk about this again. We are still planning Canada Day in Ottawa. We're not sure how it's going to look like, because the feds have sort of indicated that they're planning a Canada Day thing in Ottawa as well. We'll see what that's going to look like. But whatever, it's fluid. And so on our way to Ottawa, we want to do this speaking tour, Kenora, Dryden, Thunder Bay, Marathon, Sault Ste. Marie, Sudbury, North Bay. If you're in any of these places and you want to help organize, that would be greatly appreciated. It'll be myself, Salim Mansour, and Sean Taylor is going to join us. And as you just heard, I invited Joseph Bourgault to come along as well. So, we'll see what happens there. So if you're in any of those communities, reach out, send me an email, info at ffcs.info, and we'll get you hooked up, and we'll start to look after some of the logistics and particulars. Hopefully we can put this together. I haven't heard much from any of these communities as of yet, other than Thunder Bay. That's shaping up, but we are looking for some others. So, Mark, if you get a chance, Joe Bag of Donuts from Alberta needs to get in contact with someone from PPC about something he's doing in Alberta. Yeah, I'll just tell him to send me an email or Facebook Messenger or whatever. Valerie says, have a beautiful, blessed night. Thank you so much for introducing us to Joseph Bourgault. It's a breath of fresh air to hear politicians speak truth. Yes, it is. This was a great conversation. I need some uplifting, positive shit right about now. Thanks to both of you, you fine gentlemen. Yeah, thank you. And my pleasure. All of this is my pleasure and duty. So Barry says, the difference is we welcome all religions into the PPC. I think he's an amazing person and is honest, but I don't think the PPC can only focus on God. It has to be more open to the faith. Yeah, and I agree with that, Barry. I and we've had these discussions in Saskatchewan too, where I think you're pigeonholing yourself a little bit when you do that. And that's not to suggest you denounce spirituality or faith or religion. You accept it, and you accept that people are of different faiths and different religions and so on. And so I think that approach is best if you're going to want, to attract as many Canadians as possible without pigeonholing yourself. Again, I'm spiritual. I'm not religious, but I have a relationship with God. I believe in God. I believe in the Creator. I believe in all of this. I'm just not religious because I don't believe man has the appropriate power or intelligence to run a religion. And history sort of proves that out, I think. That's my take. I'm not suggesting it's the right one. It's mine. And that's how I look at things. So yeah, I don't think that's, that should be. Joseph looks at it a little differently, and that's okay. But at some point, these things are the things that you have to get past if you're ever going to unite politically. Again, it's easy to sort of unite all of these different groups, under a convoy, because a convoy wasn't based on, God or religion or anything else other than core values of freedom, liberty, justice, equality under the law, prosperity, and truth. Pretty easy to unite under those. And so, that's the example, that all of these groups that have different goals and different agendas, maybe, or different ideas, it's okay. It's all okay. Because sooner or later, as we saw with the convoy, we will all unite. We will all come together and support whatever is happening. So it is what it is. It's just when you get into politics, then you get into policy. And, of course, there's always egos and those types of things. So that's also up there too. Anyways, enough. Thanks, Troy. Appreciate it. Yeah. Barry says, me too. I believe in God, but I'm not religious. But all faiths have truth. Yeah, absolutely. I know. And Joan says all religions have been infiltrated, and that's very, very true. But that's humanity, right? Like we're fallible. Humans are far from perfect. Humans are corruptible. Humans are humans. We're imperfect. So that's going to happen, which is why I'm not in a religion, because I understand humanity is not perfect. And so my relationship with God is mine and mine alone, and it's perfect. Yes, shadow banning is off the charts. Of course it is. I mean, I just have to go to my account and look, and every time I do, it says restricted. So yeah, but we did pretty good. I think we got up to about 180 on Facebook and YouTube tonight, so that's pretty good. And there's also Twitter. We'll get lots of views on Twitter. And of course, there's D Live. I got to say hi to my folks over on D Live. Hey, D Live, how's it going over there? And we're also doing a podcast live over on Podbean. So that's the other update I got to tell you guys. We're also podcasting. So these episodes will also be podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Podbean, and Spotify. So if you like listening to it on the radio or in the garage while you're puttering around, or out in the yard while you're doing whatever it is you do in the yard, throw on a podcast, Forum for Canadian Sovereignty, and listen up. So this one will be there as well. Anyways, that's going to be a wrap, you guys. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for being part of the discussion. And be cool. And remember, globalism bad, nationalism good. All right. Ciao for now.
One day, one day, one day. it show stays on because of you fools. We've been dancing with the devil way too long. I know it's fun, but get ready to pay your dues. Oh God, come back home. This crazy world is filled with liars and abusers. We need you now before we're too far gone. I hope one day they finally see the truth. God, we need you now.